What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host. My name is John, also known as the Martian, here to talk about this week's UFC pay-per-view going down this Saturday night from Las Vegas, Nevada, headlined by a flyweight title fight between Alexandre Pantoja and Kai-Asakura, along with 13 other fights, 14 in total, going down from Vegas this weekend. And we're going to talk about all those fights here shortly. We did have a week off last week. The last card we talked about was the Yan versus Figueiredo card. And I think it was actually a pretty good week of predictions for me. Some of the bets that I endorsed: the one, Zhao Long money line, Carlos Hernandez money line, Choi no scorecards, the Yu Jalisi goes the distance, Gabriela Fernandez as the biggest underdog of the year, and that goes the distance in the Peter Yan fight. The losers were Kavanaugh sub, Ochoa money line, and Volkan Ozdemir money line, and Tabitha Ricci money line as well. So it was a pretty good card, though. I think some of the more confident ones like Choi no scorecards came through, and just hitting on Gabriela Fernandez as a plus 750 dog, the biggest dog all year. Felt good to get lucky on that one, and it was a pretty fun card, honestly. I mean, the two women's knockouts were just insane. Well, even though one was a sub, but still, the Shi Ming, she's probably going to be a fucking superstar now with that head kick knockout, and fun little card there at in the middle of the night here for us East Coast people, and we only got two events left for the year. This card this weekend, and then we have another fight night next week in Tampa, and then that'll be it for the UFC this year. And I'll also be making a big announcement at the end of the year here, so keep your eyes open for that. But one last thing before we get into the fights this week, we just passed December 2nd, which was the anniversary of UFC 218, which took place in December 2nd, 2017. That was the first UFC card I made a podcast before. And 7 years later, here we are. Still have made a podcast before every single UFC card since then. So, about 40 cards a year, 7 years straight, over 200 events straight where I made content beforehand. Typically talking about every single fight, predicting the fight, predicting the best bets, talking about the matchups, the fighters, and just an insane amount of fights. Let's see, 14. Let's say on average there were 12 fights a card. Let's say there were 210 cards. That rounds up to 2,500 fights discussed on the Martian MMA podcast without a single missed week. So definitely proud of that accomplishment. It's not easy at times, but it's also not difficult. So let's get into these fights. We got a pay-per-view card, 14 fights. Make sure you go light on the dogs, because there's no fucking humanly possible way that more than 4 underdogs win on this card. I would say the absolute maximum of dogs that win is 4. It'll probably be more like 2 or 3, in all honesty. So the time of the underdog is over, especially on pay-per-view. So keep that in mind. And let's get into these fights. I feel I'm interested in these fights. I'm looking forward to the card. I think the main card is structured pretty well, and it's just tough, though, to form concrete opinions on 14 fights. Like, I'm sure if you guys listen, I'm not going to be firmly stamping my opinion on all 14 fights, because it's honestly just unrealistic. How the hell do you have enough time to analyze and watch tape and firm, concrete, confident opinions on 14 fights, unless you're just doing nothing else all week? So we'll get into these fights here. Heavyweight division, Kennedy and Nzechukwu, Luque-Brzeski. Odds for this one, Kennedy, huge favorite, minus 500. Brzeski coming back, plus 375. Yeah, I mean, should be a heavyweight striking fight. Brzeski is kind of weak. He gets hurt by punches pretty easily. Was initially thinking, maybe I'll play the over 1.5 here. Kennedy, he can kind of take his time. He's not really a guy who firmly sits down on his strikes. He's definitely more content to be a volume striker, and he really hasn't proven that power at all at heavyweight so far. But Watching Brzeski get knocked out by Waldo and by Parkin, I just don't think this guy deals well with getting hit. And they're also just going to strike the entire time. There's very, very little chance these guys grapple or clinch with one another. So I'm just staying away from this one. I think Kennedy will win using his superior striking. It's probably going to be a lot quicker here. He's longer and knows how to use his reach better. And Brzeski's just all offense, man. I mean, his defense sucks. His cardio is not good. And I think Kennedy will probably win this one without too much ease. Seems like a question of whether it's going to be KO or decision. At the current price, honestly, I would be leaning towards decision because it is all the way up at, north of 300, while you'd have to lay juice on the KO, which I just don't like doing here. So no bet there. Moving on to the lightweight division, Clay Guida, Chase Hooper, minus 1,200 for Chase Hooper, Clay Guida plus 750. This is a complete layup for Chase Hooper. There's absolutely no chance that Clay Guida's old, ancient bum ass wins this fight. The age difference alone. Then you move on to the fact that Chase is just so much quicker. He's the much better grappler. Clay Guida wins all of his fights with his wrestling and grappling and cardio, but Chase Hooper is the superior grappler by a huge margin here. And, they already grappled once in professional jiu-jitsu. Chase Hooper easily knee-barred him, just no effort even put up there by Clay Guida. The match lasted like 2 minutes. And 4 minutes, calf slicer, not a knee bar, excuse me. However, I just see no reason to think that Clay Guida can even remotely compete here. He's absolutely fucking ancient. He's like 42 years old or something, and he just runs out of steam as the fight goes on. Chase Hooper is going to easily finish him. I honestly think that minus 200 for Chase Hooper by ITD is a free money type of wager. I have a little more than 2 units on it. And Chase is just going to easily submit him, in my opinion. Round 1 sub. Moving on to the first pick'em fight of the card in the welterweight division. Michael Chiesa, Max Griffin here. Pick'em line here. Chiesa actually getting more action this week. He was the dog earlier in the week. And, I can't really knock playing the dog on either side here. But I watched some footage on these guys, and I've decided that my side is Max Griffin in this fight. And this is a great fight to pick a side on. Which we'll have another one of those coming up here shortly. But just a pick'em fight, you might as well pick a side on it, right? So Max Griffin, I believe, in this fight has more ways to win the fight, in the sense that I think that he can win if the fight stays standing, right? I think that Max Griffin could potentially land his own takedowns. And I think that even if the fight starts going poorly for him, he gets taken down, he's getting controlled. I trust Max Griffin to rally back from a deficit more than I do Michael Chiesa. It's been a really long time since Michael Chiesa has won a competitive fight, and I just don't really trust him to do so here. I mean, he's coming off a pretty long layoff. I mean, sure, he beat Tony Ferguson, which was an absolute gift. The UFC's like, hey, this guy's our commentator. Let's throw him a bone here. Let him get an easy win, semi-high profile win. And I don't know. I just don't think really. I don't think Michael Chiesa really wants to be a full-time fighter anymore, and I think that when he's in the cage with Max Griffin, who's been pretty active lately, I think that he's going to realize that, hey, this isn't Tony Ferguson I'm fighting, and I think that he's going to feel the power of Max Griffin's punches. He's not going to respond too well, and I'm not sure if he's going to get knocked out or if it's going to be a decision win. I kind of like the under 2.5 here, or the fight to end inside the distance. I just feel it's a very binary fight where when it's on the feet, Michael Chiesa poses no threat. He's a completely harmless striker, while Max Griffin actually does have some power in his hands. And then Michael Chiesa, is terrific at getting to the back and submitting people. He's submitted really, really good fighters with that rear naked choke in his career. And Max is going to be in trouble if he gets there. But I think Max's takedown defense, his ability to defend once he's on the floor, is actually pretty solid. And, this is an old man welterweight showdown. I think Max Griffin has more paths here. Despite Michael Chiesa having the clearest path of all, with the grappling, with the back takes, that is the clearest singular path here. However, I don't think it happens, and I think Max Griffin put some paws on Michael Chiesa to win the fight. And honestly, I think the ITD, the under, and the Max Griffin money line are all valuable bets here. I'm not sure which one I will pick as the most valuable, but I'll say Max Griffin. Max Griffin money line at pick'em price. I will endorse it. And we're moving on to the flyweight division. Cody Durden, Josh Van in a great fight here. Lightweight, or excuse me, I don't even know why I said lightweight, but Josh Van is the minus 150 favorite. Cody Durden plus 130. I have Josh Van winning this fight. However, I would not invest in him before the fight because Josh Van is kind of a slow starter, and he very, very typically has a lapsing moment in these fights where he either starts slow, gets taken down, gets hurt with a punch, and Cody Durden is a really fast starter. He doesn't really build into the fights too well, while Josh Van does. So I just see no reason to invest in Josh before the fight. I do think his odds of winning around 60%. That's pretty accurate here with minus 150. I just think that Josh Van is the better overall fighter. Cody Durden is a strong wrestler and grappler, and we haven't really seen Van tested too much in the grappling, and what we've seen hasn't looked great, especially his debut or his second fight. He got out-grappled thoroughly in that fight and submitted, but that was 3 years ago. The guy's been so active. He's been, he was literally like 18 years old when that fight happened, and he's been improving so much. He's been so active. He's been getting so much better lately and beating better and better fighters. And I just think he's a much better boxer than Cody here. I think that he's going to deal with the adversity of Durden's grappling attack, probably get taken down and controlled for a bit early. And then when Cody inevitably looks to kind of be taking a deep breath, slowing down like he did versus Bruno Silva, there's a time to jump in on Josh Van in the live line. I think Van live will be a great bet here, and I expect Cody to win the first round. I do, and I think Josh takes over in the second and third. So live bet the best one there on Josh Van. And also, why would you want Cody Durden to win the fight? Really? Josh Van is so much cooler of a fighter. A flyweight who has sick boxing, who throws nasty punches and combinations, who has nonstop exciting fights versus another wrestler. How many wrestlers are there on the roster now? 500? How many combination boxers are there? 6. Josh Van, way cooler fighter. Hopefully he wins here. Next fight, catchweight fight, 195. Chris Weidman, Eric Anders. This is essentially a premier division fight, so we'll go ahead and call it that. A fight that got rebooked from a few weeks back. Near pick'em line here again, and my side is Eric Anders. I believe that Eric Anders needs a lot less to go right to win the fight. Been more active, hasn't had any traumatic leg injuries, and Eric Anders' money line, I believe, is the side here, but his no scorecards line at a near pick'em price is also a very valuable bet here. I just think that if anybody's finishing here, it's very likely to be Eric with his hands, just by knocking Chris out by being an old man with a lot of miles on him. I just don't trust Chris Weidman to have the energy to finish a fight here. I think he's going to be fighting pretty conservatively, trying to conserve his energy for a decision if it has to go there. While I think Anders is the bigger hitter of the two, and I think it's going to be interesting to see who's quicker here because both these guys are so glacially slow. And I'll pick Anders by knockout in the second round. I like Anders' money line and no scorecards. Next fight, welterweight division, Randy Brown, Brian Battle. Really good fight here between two solid guys. Brian Battle is the favorite, minus 220, with Randy Brown coming back plus 185. I think this line is a tad wide on Randy Brown. I think they're disrespecting the rude boy a little bit here. I mean, Randy Brown, 18 UFC fights, 13 of those being wins. I mean, I feel like he's had a ton of UFC experience, and he's kind of gone underrated, honestly, gone a little disrespected. But Brian Battle, the same could be said about him. I mean, this guy is improving at a massive rate, and if you look at him 3 years ago, coming off a tough as a middleweight versus now, just light and day difference, and you can just so clearly see that this guy's getting so better, and he's got a really fun fighting style. I like the way he throws in combination and distance, and then he works his way into the clinch, and he does really good work with his knees and elbows from the clinch, maybe look to take a fight to the floor. I mean, I feel like the guy's just a very versatile offensive fighter. His defense, not that good though. I mean, Even Giuseppe, who Brado had, had his number pretty early on there. Giuseppe landed a lot of straight punches, and I think Randy Brown will have that same opportunity. And I just see this fight being a little closer than what the line indicates, and I also see the fight being more likely to go the distance than the line indicates. So the bet I like the best here is the fight to go the distance at plus 130. I think that people are maybe overrating Bryan Battle's last knockout win a little too much here, considering that his KO line is, it's plus 250. His ITD at plus 110. I don't know, man. I mean, a little bit north of 45% for Bryan Battle to finish here. I mean, Randy Brown is a real solid fighter. The guys who have finished him, Jack Della, Luque, Nico Price, oddly enough. I just don't see, I don't put Bryan Battle in that tier of finisher or hitter yet. So I think that goes the distance at plus 130 is off there. And it's the bet I like the most. I do think it'll be a Bryan Battle decision, and it should be a great fight. Looking forward to that one a lot. Featherweight division next, Movsar Evloev, Aljamain Sterling. Odds for this one have Evloev as the favorite, minus 225, Sterling plus 190. Should be a grappling fight here. Definitely a number one contender type of fight. I imagine whoever wins this fight is next to fight Topuria. If they're not doing Lopes, I don't know what they're doing with Lopes or Volkanovski. I thought they were maybe doing Volkanovski versus Lopes. Who knows? But I got Aljamain Sterling here as a bet. Plus 200, I think, is a very wide, disrespectful line. Movsar Evloev is a great fighter, but he's quite harmless in terms of he's not a finish threat at all, while Aljamain is with the back takes, with the rear naked chokes. And Evloev is a great wrestler, but I think his jiu-jitsu skill and his ability to watch out for the submissions is a little lackluster. We saw that in the Lopes fight, where he just tends to put himself in danger when grappling. So I just don't see Movsar putting a margin on Sterling to where he deserves to be a 70% favorite. I think he should be the slight favorite here, maybe like minus 150 for Evloev. But, big disrespect to Aljo here. The clearest upside either fighter has in this fight is Aljamain winning via back takes. And I would just be surprised to see Movsar have as clear of a win condition as Aljamain getting to the back here. So I like Sterling at the 2-1 dog money line. I think that's actually my best underdog money line of the entire card. And I just think 70% for Evloev is way too much. Fight massively favored to go the distance, minus 300. That's probably accurate. And let's hope Aljamain can get to the back here, because that is his way to win. But even on the feet, man, I mean, this could be extremely competitive when it stays standing. So, welterweight division next, Vicente Luque, Themba-Gorimbo. Odds for this one have Gorimbo as the favorite, minus 150. Luque coming back plus 130. I hate Themba. I truly hate this guy, and was able to predict his last fight really well. Bet to go the distance at plus money there. They're wise to it now that the Themba is not really a good finisher, and the goes the distance is now favored. I think Vicente Luque is the side here. Gorimbo hasn't beaten anybody remotely good. I think that Luque is by far and away the best fighter he's ever fought, and Luque is also, a dangerous submission grappler. This guy has a nasty choke game, nasty front chokes with his darces, and we saw Gorimbo get choked out by AJ Fletcher, who's not a good fighter, with the guillotine choke. And I don't know, man. I just think Gorimbo is using his athleticism and his urgency to kind of aggressively steamroll some of these lower level fighters. And I just think Vicente Luque, even though he's past his prime, even though people have been talking about, like, is Vicente Luque shot for like 5 years now, I still think the guy is a good enough career fighter, and he's shown a good enough skill lately to take him at plus money here. I think Luque's subline at 5-1 seems good, and just his no scorecards line in general. I mean, I would be pretty shocked to see Gorimbo finish Vicente Luque here, and you can get his no scorecards at minus 136 on FanDuel for Luque. I think if Luque is winning, it's probably via being out grappled via decision, and you would just break even if that happened. You'd get a refund if you took Luque no scorecards. So I think a mix of Luque no scorecards and Luque money line are a good play here. I'm going to just find out what Luque no scorecards is on DK before I move on. Minus 165. So yeah, the best bet. Best line, minus 136 on FanDuel for Luque. No scorecards there. And, I mean, Luque looked pretty worrisome in his last fight versus Buckley, but Buckley's actually a good, legitimate, dangerous fighter. And Gorimbo is just, a certified bum still, in my opinion. So, moving on to the last fight on the prelims, which we have Anthony Smith taking on Dominic Reyes in the light heavyweight division. Dom Reyes minus 360. Anthony Reyes coming back plus 295. Yeah, I guess it's fine. I mean, Dom Reyes, much more dangerous, lethal striker, and he's probably going to put some paws on Anthony Smith early here. And you're just better off live betting Anthony Smith if the guy's still conscious after a few minutes and Reyes is looking a little sloppy. You can just jump in on Smith. But the chances of Reyes just hitting Smith and hurting him are too high for me to even be interested in Anthony Smith at the 3-1 dog money line. I'm not interested in Dom Reyes at minus 360. Obviously, the guy's won one fight in like 5 years, and I just obviously not interested in taking that on Reyes. But yeah, I mean, I think he's probably going to knock Smith out. Hopefully he knocks him out in the first round. I mean, this is a terrible fight to lead into the pay-per-view. I don't understand why this was chosen as the fight to lead into the pay-per-view, but so be it. We're at the main card already here. We have 5 fights where we have the first fight in the featherweight division, Nate Landwehr-Choi, an absolute terrific choice to start off the main card here, where we have Nate Landwehr is the slight favorite, minus 120. Choi coming back plus 100. The odds have been going in Choi's direction all week. I understand why. Nate can be a little bit of a slow starter. He can tend to get dropped or hurt early on, and then he tends to warm up as the fight goes. And Choi's a solid boxer. He has power in those hands. He's quick as well. But I do believe that Nate is the more versatile fighter. I do believe he has more paths to victory here, and I believe that after a little bit of a hairy moment early on here, I think Nate's going to take over with his pressure, his volume, maybe mixing some takedowns. I just believe that Nate is the better, well-rounded fighter with the better wins, the better resume. And Choi, solid performance in his last one against Bill, scoring the knockout there. I still think that was a pretty flawed performance. I wouldn't go as far to say that he looked good there. But, I definitely would be waiting to invest in Nate live here because the guy's probably going to get hurt early on. But to be honest, man, minus 120, I do think the chances that Nate wins this fight are higher than that. I would put them closer to minus 150, 60%. So I wouldn't knock a play on Nate before the fight. I mean, if the line keeps coming in, if Nate somehow gets the plus money, I'll be forced to invest at that point. But I do see Nate winning the fight, and I don't trust Choi's cardio, his output, his versatility to keep him in this late. And I think if Choi wants to win, it's going to have to be by an early KO. I'd be pretty surprised to see him win the fight over 1.5 rounds. I think that would be surprising, in my opinion. Next fight, staying in the featherweight division, Bryce Mitchell taking on Gracie, a fight that nobody in the universe understands why this fight is on the main card. Bryce Mitchell minus 950, Gracie plus 650. I mean, just made an absolute embarrassment of himself, and that was already a year and a half ago, when he fought Charles Jourdain. And in that fight, I thought to myself, man, this guy hasn't fought in 4 years, and it looked like he hasn't improved at anything. It looked like he literally hasn't improved a single skill, striking, wrestling, grappling, none of it. And I just don't think that Crone really wants to be an MMA fighter. I don't think he's very serious about this at all. I mean, he was a really, really high-level grappler. Stopped that over 10 years ago at this point. And I just don't think the guy has that spirit in him anymore. I mean, he's 36 now. He had a long jiu-jitsu career before he even got to MMA, and I just think he's kind of over it. Maybe just cashing in some paychecks. I really don't think he wants to be there, and I see no real reason why he would beat Bryce Mitchell here. Bryce Mitchell, I think the physicality and the strength is going to be way in favor of Bryce Mitchell here, and I just think Bryce is going to beat him everywhere. And I know Crone comes from a grappling background and should be able to defend off any subs here, but I just think that Bryce is going to be so much stronger and more tenacious, and I just think that Crone could possibly look for a way out. So the fact that Bryce's sub is 5-1 and sub 2-3 is 10-1, I could see Crone just kind of giving up an arm triangle or giving up a kind of a soft submission here and just thinking, hey, I'm done with this. My contract's over. This is the last one. I'm tapping. I'm getting out of here. So that'll be interesting. Two of probably the dumbest guys on the entire roster there. So that one should be fun. Hopefully Bryce puts on a riveting post-fight speech as always. Heavyweight division next, a rematch. Cyril Gane, Alexandre Volkov. Odds for this one, Gane minus 355, Volkov plus 290. So they fought, about 3 years ago. It was virtually a shutout for Cyril Gane. It wasn't a dominant fight, I think that Volkov put up a solid resistance the entire time 3.5 years ago. But, that was only Gane's 8th fight in MMA, and he's continued to get more and more experience, fought in a big stage a few times. He fought in front of a crowd for all 5 of his fights since then. A few hometown fights in Paris. He, headlined the pay-per-view or two. Got to experience, being in there with the best in Ngannou and Jones. And I think that Gane is probably just continued to get better and better and more comfortable in these big situations. And Volkov has been looking solid lately, on a win streak, knocking off some good wins lately. But it's a young man's game, and the speed in the first fight was a huge factor of why Cyril Gane won and dictated that entire fight. And I think the speed is still going to be heavily in favor of Cyril Gane here. That fight was in the small cage too, so I think that was actually worse for Gane, and Gane still won 14 out of 15 rounds in the scorecards there. Volkov landed 100 strikes. He landed a lot of straight punches. He did well throughout the entire fight. He just didn't ever do enough. And Gane's movement, his ability to be elusive, his output was just a little higher the entire time. Volkov had a hard time tracking him down. So if Volkov shows up, he ups the output, he ups the aggression, he can try. I don't know, man. I just don't see it happen. I just don't see how is Volkov going to cut off the cage here. That's never been a strong suit of his, and I just think that Gane is going to constantly be retreating and resetting and blitzing in and out with quick strikes here and just touching Volkov up to get a decision win here. So Gane by decision, minus 135. I think it's a winning bet here. It's a pay-per-view favorite at Juice method of victory, but I think it honestly is a pretty inevitable outcome here that Gane wins this one by decision. So I think minus 135 for Gane decision is good there. Moving on to the co-main event, welterweight division, 5-round co-main event here. Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Machado-Garry, undefeated fighter. Shavkat is at minus 400, Garry coming back at plus 300. So apparently this is the most combined wins of 2 undefeated fighters ever fighting in the UFC. So they're 33-0 combined. Apparently Adesanya versus Costa was 32-0. So really, really good fight here. I mean, Ian Machado-Garry earned my respect big time by taking this fight. Shavkat has earned my respect a long time ago, but it takes balls from Shavkat as well. I mean, he already had the Bilal fight, and now he's taking this fight. That to me shows that Shavkat is just immensely confident in himself. These guys have trained together before, and you got to think Shavkat must be pretty confident in the matchup for him to take the fight and for him to risk his title shot to take this one. And I think it's probably justified. I mean, Machado has been a little too pedestrian in there lately. I just think he relies on landing like a big single shot to knock you out like he did versus, Daniel Rodriguez or Keenan Song or Jordan Williams. But I think his aggression and output throughout the fights leaves a lot to be desired, and I think he just treats the fight a little too casually at times. And I think Shavkat fights with a little more tenacity, which is a word I've used a few times. I like using that word. And I think the fight should feature a lot of clinching, a lot of grappling. I honestly think this one, the fight to go longer is severely mispriced here. I think people putting stock into a Shavkat early finish, I disagree with that. I just think that pretty much every prop associated with the fight, starting 3, 4, 5, going over 3.5, going the distance, I think they're all off. And the bet I like the most is the over 3.5. It's plus 105. I invested in that one for a little over a unit and a half, honestly. I mean, I thought the over was good at minus 130, and then DK dropped it at plus 105, which is a pretty big discrepancy. And, so I hit that one pretty hard, and I like this one. I think it will be a Shavkat decision. But, man, I don't know. The odds on this one, they're really... Well, obviously, Shavkat has finished every opponent, right? He's 18-0, 18 finishes. So I think that's kind of playing into this line a little bit. People are just assuming, oh, Shavkat's going to win, he's going to finish. But I just think that his finish equity is being a little overrated here. So they have, ITD at 60%. Machado never lost, and somehow he's 60% to get finished here. I think the familiarity they have with each other too from sparring might be better for the over. I think they're probably both going to have some respect for each other. I think that we're going to see some clinching. And yeah, I think this one's hitting over 3.5. So I'll predict Shavkat by decision, which is plus 320, which is pretty damn good, honestly. And I like the over 3.5 there. And, starts round 4, minus 110. Starts 5 at plus money. I don't know. I could be dead wrong about this one, but I like the over 3.5 there, and I think pretty much all the overs are good. So we're moving on to the main event here in the flyweight division. Alexandre Pantoja defending his belt once again, the most active champ in the UFC by far, taking on UFC debutant Chiesa-Griffin in an interesting matchup here where we have minus 240 for Pantoja, plus 205 for Asakura. So I like this fight. There was really no clear contender after Mokaev got cut, and they decided to outsource it to Japan to get Ryzen's champ over here at Chiesa-Griffin. I like the decision. The decision kind of took a little balls. It took some out of the box thinking. For a fact this shit was some Hunter Campbell thinking because dumbass bitch ass Dana White doesn't even watch MMA anymore. His main it seems that Dana White's main priority in life has become sucking the penis of Donald Trump. I think that's really all he cares about is draining the ball sack of Donald Trump. That seems to be the priority of him rather than the MMA promotion that he runs. So getting into this fight should be a good one here. I will be picking Alexandre Pantoja to defend his title here. Pantoja fucking rocks. Very, very cool fighter. Very versatile, all offensive, just all gas, no brakes type of fighter. He can go the full 25 minutes. He can grapple. He can strike. He's an absolute ferocious fighter. I almost said tenacious, but I had to switch it up to ferocious. So Chiesa-Griffin, a very skilled striker, very dynamic striker, big power. He feints really well. He kind of waits for that perfect shot a lot. But he has power in all of his shots, and he's not a bad grappler, but I think that I've seen enough questionable things from him in terms of defending takedowns that I will be picking Pantoja here. And also two other big factors here. This is Asakura's first time ever fighting outside of Japan. That's a big thing. It's his first time making 125 pounds in 7 years. You heard that correctly. I thought this guy was fighting flyweight the entire time. He was fighting bantamweight. He hasn't made 125 pounds. Well, it's actually 126. But since he fought some guy named Ji-Hoon Moon, oddly enough, he lost to him. He weighed 126 back in June 10th, 2017 when he was 8-0. So it's been over 15 fights. It's been over 7 years since he's made this weight. So not only does he have to travel to America, fight in the UFC, the biggest stage of his career, he has to cut more weight. He has to fight the best fighter he's ever fought in Pantoja. Kyoji Horiguchi's a tough test as well. But and then one big thing, I don't know if anybody's talking. I don't really listen to anybody else talk about fights or podcasts or whatnot. But if you're listening to someone talk about this fight, make sure they mention the cage versus the ring. The difference in the cage versus the ring is huge, and I think it's really going to come into play here. I've seen a few of Kai's fights where someone is trying to take him down against the cage, and you can lean against the ropes, right? So you can kind of get some give in the ropes, and that actually kind of helps you defend the takedown. It makes it a little more difficult for the guy to complete the takedown. That cage is like a brick wall, and it helps the grappler instead of the guy defending the takedowns. And Pantoja is just so skilled at using the cage and getting guys against it, and I think that's going to be a big factor for him here. And I think Pantoja is going to just do what he does versus all of his opponents, is just blitz in with strikes, get to the clinch, get to the body lock, hit the takedowns, hit the trips, get to the back take, control guys for long stretches. If they get up, he'll just do it again because he has stellar cardio. He can go hard for the full 25 minutes like he's done several times lately, and I think that he will pass this test without a ton of difficulty. But obviously, if Kai wins the fight, I think it's going to be by knockout, while I think Pantoja has a much better chance of winning by sub. Maybe, I doubt a ground and pound knockout, but a decision, obviously. I think people are thinking this one's going to be very binary, whether it's going to be Kai by KO or Pantoja by sub, and they're thinking, it's going to be an easy fight to finish. The fight is 70% to finish. I don't know. I don't know. I would not be liking that juice or Pantoja ITD. It's slight juice -110. I think like if you have to play Pantoja, I would do a sub decision line, which is the same bet I took versus Urkeg. I think that it'll be Pantoja either out grappling his way to a sub or a decision. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have like a bet I'll officially endorse for that fight. I don't have anything I see that I really jumps out on me, but I think the fight is lying correctly. Pantoja 70%, maybe 71%. That seems accurate to me, and I think Pantoja. I'll pick decision. Pantoja by decision as the official pick, and that will be that. So top to bottom on the card, I like Chiesa-Griffin ITD -200, Max Griffin money line at a pick'em price. I like Eryk Anders at a pick'em price, and Eryk Anders no scorecards. The goes the distance in the Brian Battle and Randy Brown fight at +130. Aljamain Sterling moneyline +200. Vicente Luque moneyline +130, and no scorecards -136. I like Cyril Gane by decision -135. Rakhmonov-Garry over 3.5 +105. And I'm very, very interested in betting on Josh Van and Nate Landwehr in the live betting window. Those are the two bets I would like circle for a live betting opportunity. I think those will be really, really golden there. And that'll do it. So hope you all enjoyed the podcast. Hope you all enjoyed the fights this weekend. We only got one card left to talk about for the rest of the year. 2024 about to be in the books for the UFC and for the Martian MMA podcast. So thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the podcast. Got some good information. Hope you all enjoy the fights and win some bets this weekend. I will see you all next week before the next UFC event. Peace out.